Good afternoon, everyone. It's Tuesday, February 20th, 2024, and I'm calling the meeting of the Senate Elections Committee to order, and a quorum is present. Now, you may have noticed that the clock on the wall is different than the clock on your phones. That is 5 minutes slow, so we're going to convene by that clock and maybe adjourn by my clock here. So. We have 4 bills today to consider, and we did change the order just a bit to accommodate some senators that are presenting in other committees. And so what we will do is take the fourth order, Senate File 3942. Senator Boldon will be first. Senator Boldon. Senator Boldon, just proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, committee members. I am happy to present Senate File 3942, which is a relatively short and straightforward bill that would authorize charter and statutory cities, towns, and counties to establish public financing programs for local candidates to be funded with local tax dollars. The structure of the program would be left up to those local governments to decide. Candidates would have to show that they have support from the community, but the method for determining that support is left, again, to the local government. And just to reiterate, this isn't requiring anyone to do anything. It is eliminating a barrier and providing an option for localities to do this if they wish. We know that at the state level, we have had long-standing and widely used practice of public financing of campaigns that is used on both sides of the aisle. It reduces barriers to entry into running for office and increases diversity of those who are able to run for office. We also know that the influence of money in politics is a concern for many Minnesotans across the political spectrum. And this is one way to allow candidates to focus less on, larger donors and more on potential constituents, to have those conversations, and provides greater access for candidates. And so it really is removing a barrier should communities decide to enact this practice at their local level. With that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to take questions.
Questions or comments from the committee?
We're all kind of cockeyed here, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, I do have a question. So.
Senator Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Boldon, what barriers does it eliminate? You described in the bill. What barriers does it eliminate?
Senator Boldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I have talked to other candidates and other potential candidates about when people are thinking of running for office, particularly people who don't come from a background of wealth, particularly women, lower income individuals, the daunting sort of thought of having to raise money for a campaign is a barrier for many folks. And so having sort of a peace of mind and a system as we think about public financing, again, a program that many of us in this room use, at the state level and has been used for quite some time, having a program to be able to have candidates focus less on big donors and more on either small donors or just having those conversations with people at the doors, potential supporters, potential constituents is valuable.
Thank you.
Senator Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so, Senator Boldon, I think, again, all the goals always sound noble, but there are no barriers today, right? Until the only place we've seen barriers is when we enact ranked choice voting and the things that are designed to get rid of barriers, and ultimately it throws up more barriers and more barriers. And so if it's to remove the focus of the large donors, we all, right, everybody has to go out and work, nobody grows up to be a candidate, so they all come from they don't know what they don't know, thank God, because they might not run ever. But in these scenarios, did the cities come to us? Did the counties come to us? Who came to us and said, this is something that we need to do because we don't see enough participation in elections, and that this is a barrier from their eyes?
Senator Boldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I also, as we are talking about barriers, also just would note this bill is removing the barrier, allowing localities to enact this. They currently aren't able to do that. After if this bill will be passed, they would be able to do it. I will also maybe just direct members' attention to the letters of support in your packets. There's a letter from We Choose Us, a letter from Common Cause, and a letter from Minneapolis City Council person. And so there is interest among different communities to enact this type of program. Currently, they don't have that ability. This would allow them, again, if they choose to do so.
Senator Grant.
Thank you, Senator Boldon. And so, Senator Boldon, and thank you, Mr. Chair. On the last, on lines 1.12, local candidate must demonstrate that the candidate has support in the community as determined by the home rule charter, statutory city, town, or county. What I get, it sounds like they could define it, but how does somebody define that to ensure that it's fair, equal opportunity for all who come forth? It seems very, very broad, and I don't know that we have that. We have that in some of our public financing, right? You've established criteria, so I would think it'd be more less subjective and more something that is actually definable if we're going to put guidelines in, so people know it's actually a fair opportunity if they're going to spend taxpayer dollars on it, and so I worry about that. But if it's designed to create more opportunity and get rid of that, we always go to dark money, or at least hover around that, it's all dark money. And I would hope it would eliminate the external support for local candidates. And do you think this would eliminate the fair votes or the host of nonprofit, nonpartisans that fill this room on a daily basis in trying to influence local elections with monies that are raised from outside of our environment for local elections?
Senator Boldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Curran, for the discussion. A couple of points I would say. The requirement for the candidates to demonstrate that they have local support in the community is intentionally broad. It is meant to be left for the local community to decide what that should look like, and I agree it should be that they should define it, and we say that they should. That might look different in different communities, and that's okay. It's really up for that individual community to decide what works for them. In terms of the second part of your question, I would say, really one of the benefits of public financing is, to allow sort of even the playing field a little bit, if you will, to have candidates be able to spend more time having conversations with their potential constituents and less time with donors. And that, I think we probably all could maybe agree that that's a good thing. This bill is not going to solve every issue. It's not going to take money out of politics. However, we know that Minnesotans have concerns around the impact of their individual voice as compared to big spenders in elections. And so this helps to level that playing field a little bit and have candidates be able to focus on having those conversations with their community versus donors.
Thank you, Senator Boldon. Mr. Chair, just a class follow-up question. So, Senator Boldon, so how do you anticipate that those municipalities would respect the taxpayers before they fund this type of initiative? It doesn't talk about voter approval referendum before they redirect these dollars to something that they may or may not agree with. So is there any concern or consideration on citizen input prior to them enacting and using their taxpayer dollars on the local elections?
Senator Boldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Curran. So that would be left open and up to the communities how they decide to approach that. This simply allows them the option to create a program such as this.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Senator Boldon. So, Mr. Chair, just to me, it looks like another solution to a problem that doesn't exist and will likely have the exact opposite outcome. And so I would urge a no vote if you're actually taking a vote, or are you laying this over?
Sure, we'll take a vote.
Taking a vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Boldon, you have letters here from Ms. Cashman, and you have letters from Common Cause, and I'm just wondering, where are the letters from the county or the township or the League of Minnesota Cities or others who would be the ones that would have to make the decision if they want it to put this into practice? Where are those letters?
Senator Boldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Anderson, for the question. I assure you I don't have a letter from every person or entity that is in favor of this policy, but through conversations with folks, there is interest in having the option to do this, and currently there is not a way for them to do it. And so, again, it's not requiring anyone to do it, but for those entities that would like to explore it, they would have the opportunity to do so.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Senator Anderson.
I would like to have a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Other questions? No, Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to highlight, I struggle to see the similarity in the discussion you mentioned, how this is similar to the public subsidy program that we have through the state to legislative candidates. The reason why I see differences in that program is because that kicks in very late in the election cycle. A candidate already has to get through a lot of steps to get to that point. If you have a contested endorsement in your local area, you've been competing, you've been talking to hundreds of delegates in your side, in your home district for a while. You may have had a primary, you've got to compete going around your district, campaigning, printing flyers, spending campaign money, needing to raise campaign money to launch an effective campaign. I had both of those my first time around. And then you get a public subsidy amount, and while it's a nice chunk to have, it's a relatively minor part of the amount that we need to fund a campaign, even in a rural district like mine that doesn't have nearly the spending that I see reported in other districts around the state. So if anyone's trying to bank on the public subsidy amount as what they need to get their campaign over the top, I probably don't have a good campaign strategy, because it is not there to be counted on as the crux of our campaign operations has to rely on this public subsidy amount that's come in. The proposal here looks like it could easily be taken advantage of. Like, I'm reading through, what's to stop an incumbent in a local city or township or any of these jurisdictions to go, hey, let's create a fund with the taxpayer dollars that we get here. We have to demonstrate that the candidate has support in the community. I've decided that I have support in the community. I'm the elected incumbent here. I'm going to decide that any challengers running against me don't have support in the community, and they're not going to get the funding. We just are granting to ourselves taxpayer dollars right to our campaign. Obviously, that's a very that's taking it to its absurd conclusion, but there's no guardrails in here that could stop something from happening, or having voters decide whether they want to have that system in place or not, whether it's on the front end with everybody. If you got 10, 12, 15 candidates that are in there, are they all going to get an equal chunk of the pie? Is this for the last couple that are on the ballot? So I think this, I don't support this bill today. It clearly needs a lot of work done to it before it would be ready to be passed into law. I don't see this as a good direction for what we need to go. Running for office is a significant challenge. You have to be up for the challenge. There are a lot of hurdles that come with it, and there are a lot of outside pressures that add to those hurdles by big outside spending that has only grown exponentially in recent years, where we see money flooding into the state on every level from all over the country. So a lot of challenges for it. I don't see this being a fix for it at all, and I'm not able to support the bill today. Thank you.
I have Senator Port next.
Thank you for bringing this bill, Senator Boldon. I'm going to try to talk about it. I really appreciate it. The more, in recent years, we've seen outside money flow into local campaigns at a rate that is unprecedented in past years. And I think that does deter people from choosing to run. How are they going to raise the money to make sure that their campaign is able to not even compete with their opponent, but compete with outside organizations that are spending huge amounts of money in these races? In other countries that have publicly funded campaigns and other states that fund campaigns with public dollars to a stronger amount than we do here in Minnesota, it's shown that there is a closer relationship between constituents, because that is who you are more responsible to than to large donors, the uber wealthy, corporations, PACs, lobbyists, things like that. So I'm very supportive of principles like this. Happy to continue to work with you as this moves through the process, but I think it's a really smart idea to allow sort of those local races to have the same opportunities that we do at the state level.
Senator Boldon, any questions? Then we have Senator Westlin.
No, Senator Rest.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Rest.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I share some of the hesitancies about this bill, but unlike, and I think it needs some improvements, but unlike Senator Matthews, I'm not going to vote no today, but I may vote no later. Okay? And I've had this conversation with Senator Boldon, and she understands my position.
Thank you, Senator Rest. Any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Rest. I would just add that I'm happy to have conversations, ongoing conversations with members about this language and opportunities to improve it as we move forward.
Any further questions? I have a question. This would require the city to pass it with their, or let's just say I'm talking about a city, pass it with their council. And who would the administration be thrown to?
Mr. Chair, so the program would be administered by the locality that chooses to enact it. This is just removing the barrier for them to be able to explore this and do this. So it would be run by the entity, whether it's a city or a county or township.
Thank you, Senator Boldon. Another question is, does this allow, the city is allowed to form this any way they wish? And I think we've always talked about having greater local support. So could this be planned so that it gives residents a higher reimbursement rate than people who are non-residents?
Mr. Chair, so I agree with you. This is really a bill about local control. It's allowing, localities to, enact this program should they choose to do so. And so, if they want to look at how they want to design their program would be up to them. So if they want to have different, rates for local folks versus non-local, they can choose what that looks like.
Thank you. Any other questions?
One last thought. Senator Boldon, the last meeting we had, you justified moving campaign finance to the campaign finance board or local elections campaign finance requirements and reportings to the state campaign finance board because it was difficult for local people who are actually hired to do that job in the municipality. But in this particular case, we think it's good for them to manage that part of the campaign finance or the elections process. And so I'm confused. We're good to remove it because it's a burden, but this is only going to increase the burdens and the complexities. And so I find it interesting that our justifications changed on need on daily basis and how we're there to help the municipalities. And yet in this case, we're going to apply a burden to them that I think is going to be challenging for their citizens to fund. But I'm challenged with the inconsistency of the reasoning for these and to offload local municipal work as justification for the two bills we did last week, and because it's hard for them. They were hired to do those jobs. I think all of those pieces should remain in the municipality. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Grant. Senator Boldon.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think one of the differences between the two is the previous bill, which is not before us, was around required reporting. And so, having that be, something that everyone is required to do. This is an option for the municipalities who choose to do so. So, two very different things.
Any other question? Roll call has been requested. Roll call is granted. The bill will be referred to the State Local Government and Veterans Committee. Our committee legislative administrator will take the roll.
Senator Carlson.
Yes.
Senator Westlin.
Yes.
Senator Curran.
No.
Senator Anderson.
No.
Senator Barr.
No.
Senator Boldon.
Aye.
Senator Swedzinski.
Yes.
Senator Dornink.
No.
Senator Limmer.
No.
Senator Marty.
Aye.
Senator Matthews.
No.
Senator Mitchell.
Aye.
Senator Port.
Aye.
Senator Rest.
Aye.
There being 8 yeses and 6 noes, the Senate File 3942 is recommended to pass and forwarded to the local, State and Local Government and Veterans Committee.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you, Senator Bolton. And now we will move to Senate File 3616, Senator Mitchell. And Senator Mitchell, I understand you have an A2 author's amendment.
I do, thank you. And I would like to move that, if allowed.
The amendment is in the packets. And Senator Bolton, perhaps you can give us a little bit of background on the amendment.
Senator Mitchell.
I'm sorry, Senator Mitchell.
Chair.
It's an author's amendment.
It's an author's amendment?
Yes,
Is
sir.
that
I
right?
have an author's amendment based on some of the work we've done with stakeholders to get the bill in the order we would like to present it in.
Okay. So Senator Mitchell moves the author's amendment on 3616. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Aye. The amendment,
It sounded like you voted no.
no. Sounded like I voted no? No,
Yes.
I didn't vote no. I voted aye. So thank you, Senator Mitchell. The amendment is adopted. Okay. Now you can proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Before us, we have a bill that will allow either administrations or student governing bodies at schools in Minnesota that have at least 1,500 students to request a temporary voting location. The reason that this is so important is because statistics show that when our young people start voting early, they are more likely to get engaged in the process, educate themselves, and stay engaged voters for the rest of their lives. And there is a huge disparity in people who say that they are always going to vote or that they're excited to vote, with young people being less than 50% versus as people get older, 65 and up, over 90%. So anything that we can do to engage our young voters and set that great habit to continue in Minnesota to be such a wonderful state with voter turnout and engagement is something I personally support. And we want to create this opportunity on college campuses specifically because it has been shown that that is an area where it can be a barrier to voting because there are a lot of students that do not have transportation, and there isn't always an election place on election day that is nearby. And even if there is, sometimes classes are still going on, students are working, and so to give them just one other day as an opportunity to early vote is really advantageous, and schools that have already done this just with their polling locations or where the county or the city has happened to put a site nearby has really increased engagement. So we want to make that opportunity statewide for colleges that meet the size criteria. With that said, I have some testifiers to kind of add to what brought this bill forward today, and I would love to bring them up.
Thank you, Senator Mitchell. I believe we have, as the first person coming up, John Runnington. And he is online.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, he's not.
And, Mr. Chair, I don't see a sign in. I don't know if that's something we need, but
We'll get one to you.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Thank you. Mr. Runningen, you can identify yourself for the record and then proceed with your testimony.
Yep, my name is John Runnigan. I go to M State in Fergus Falls, and I am the president of Lead Amend, the nonprofit that represents the 100,000 community and technical college students across the state. To start, I would like to extend my gratitude to Senator Mitchell for championing this legislation and for valuing the input of students like myself. Voting serves as a fundamental pillar of civic participation, providing young individuals with a foundational opportunity to influence and participate in the course of democracy. While voting only represents just one facet of civic engagement, voting possesses substantial influence in magnifying the voices of the youth and shaping issues that are pertinent to our daily lives. Although historically youth voting turnout has fallen behind other significant demographics, recent elections has seen a massive growth in participation among young voters. Most notably, Minnesota students have led the nation in student voting turnout for the last 3 terms. While this is a great accomplishment, disparities still persist. These disparities stem from unequal access of information and avenues for engagement, particularly across racial, ethnic lines, educational backgrounds, geographical regions, and age groups. Research conducted by the Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning and Engagement reveals that young non-voters often cite transportation challenges and inconvenient polling locations as one of the most significant barriers to voting. To address these barriers and disparities, opening on-campus polling places has proven to be effective. For instance, in 2018, students at St. Paul College successfully implemented this approach, resulting in increased accessibility to voting for communities facing obstacles. Over the 6-hour event, approximately 300 individuals cast their votes, with 100 of them being first-time voters. This event incurred minimal costs. The college waived the room rental fee as the student government sponsored it, and the primary expense was covering exclusively the poll workers, which totaled around $1,000. However, the true significance of this initiative lies in its simplification of the voting process, particularly for first-time voters. Lida Men facilitated voter registration, provided guidance on the voting procedure, and connected attendees with resources to learn about the candidates. Before I discovered the importance of civic education, I was an unlikely voter, someone this legislation aims to support. Raised in rural Minnesota by a modest income family, I was disconnected from civic engagement and our democracy. I held the belief that the system didn't represent people like me or my family, and so why should I care about it? During my time at Lida Men, I've gained insight into how the government functions and realized that legislators are just ordinary individuals. And I've come to understand that if one is dissatisfied with governmental actions, they possess the power to enact change through voting, staying informed, and expressing their views. I've learned that democracy is not a passive activity, but a duty incumbent upon young people to actively participate in. As former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor said, without fundamental civic education, we cannot hope to uphold or enhance our system of government. With this legislation, Minnesota will provide an on-ramp to democracy and continue to lead the nation in voter turnout, cultivating a new generation of active and empowered citizens like myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Runningen. I believe I have another testifier, Mr. Maxwell Sirota, and he is on Zoom. I see he is on Zoom. So, Mr. Sirota, just identify yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Maxwell Sirota, and I'm a student at Carlson College. Additionally, I work at the Carlson Center for Community and Civic Engagement, where I help to organize the center's political engagement and voter turnout programming. I am testifying today about how off-campus polling locations have made it incredibly difficult for groups of Carlson students to vote. While most Carlson students vote at the First United Church of Christ, which is only a 5 to 10 minute walk from their dorms, because of the way that Northfield's precinct boundaries are drawn, a substantial number of students vote instead at St. John Lutheran's Church, which is across the highway and approximately a 20-minute walk from campus. The vast majority of Carlson students do not own or have access to a vehicle to make a trip to the polls faster, and Northfield, like many small college towns, lacks significant public transportation options. Because of its distance and the lack of transportation, voting at St. John's Lutheran Church takes students at least 45 minutes. For most students who are busy with inflexible class schedules, extracurricular activities, and jobs, finding 45 minutes or more is extraordinarily difficult. In short, the location of a polling place far away from Carlson's campus creates a significant barrier to students exercising their fundamental right to vote. Even when steps have been taken to address these barriers, distance still proves to make voting difficult. In 2022, the Center for Community and Civic Engagement at Carlson provided shuttles to those voting at St. John's Lutheran Church in an effort to make voting easier. Yet we found that providing such a service was both difficult and only somewhat effective. Keeping the shuttle running throughout the day placed a substantial burden on center staff, while arriving at the polling location with large groups of students substantially lengthened the amount of time voting took. At the same time, students who were unable to fit in the shuttle or missed it didn't have time to wait around for it to return. At one point, a group of 8 students arrived only minutes after the shuttle had left, and when I told them it would be likely at least 20 minutes before the shuttle returned, they simply left without saying a word. I hope that my testimony today has highlighted the negative impact that far from campus polling locations can have on student voting. Voting should be quick, accessible for everyone, but for too many students it is not, precisely because of the location of their polling place. Having an early voting location on campus would alleviate these concerns for students and increase voter turnout, ensuring that college students are freely able to exercise the right to vote. Thank you for taking the time to hear my testimony today. I hope that you take my comments into consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Sirota. We have another testifier, Ms. Nicole Freeman, Government Relations Director from the Secretary of State's office. Ms. Freeman, identify yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Nicole Freeman. I serve as the Government Relations Director for the Office of the Secretary of State. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on Senate File 3616. The Office of the Secretary of State supports efforts to expand access to absentee voting, which this bill does by allowing a college or university or student government organization to request a temporary absentee location to be held on campus. We know that since the adoption of no excuse absentee voting, more Minnesotans are choosing to vote early by absentee ballot. In 2022, nearly 23% of voters chose this method to cast their ballot. And we know that college may be the first time a person votes. Having an in-person option on campus to vote allows a voter both the convenience of casting the ballot in person, which you've heard about today, but importantly allows them to work with an election official directly to cast their absentee ballot. They can get their questions answered and ensure that they're completing all the materials correctly, so they're confident that their ballot will be properly cast and counted. Finally, we appreciate Senator Mitchell's engagement with county and city election administrators on this legislation. As we consider changes to the system to expand access for voters across Minnesota, it's important that those tasked with administering the elections be a central part of those discussions. The Office of the Secretary of State and local administrators have spent the past 8 months working through the implementation of the expansions to voter access that were passed during the last session. And their partnership during this process has been greatly appreciated. The elections this year will be the first time that many of those provisions are implemented statewide. Overall, the office looks forward to continuing to work with the committee and election administrators to balance expanding voter access in a way that ensures free, fair, secure, and accurate elections. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman. Senator Mitchell, do we have any other testifiers?
I do not have any other testifiers. I would just like to add, we do continue to work with people that have brought us feedback into this process, which is why, again, we made the number 1,500 because, you know, there's some small colleges that are less than 100 people, that are all commuters, where they would have the access to transportation, where they're online, where this wouldn't make sense. So we were trying to be very mindful of the counties and the cities that would be helping to administer this, but also do it in a way that schools like the testifiers that we heard here today, where they're already trying to cobble this together and figure this out, and in some cases bear an expense to get students in a place they can vote, do have the ability to access this and ask for 1 day of on-site early voting to make sure we do have that accessibility to all voters. So I really think this is a positive for the state of Minnesota to continue to engage all of our population.
Thank you, Senator Mitchell. Questions from the committee? Senator Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Freeman and Senator Mitchell, Ms. Freeman's testimony said that it's going to be, I think she put a temporary absentee balloting on campus. So we have 18 days prior to election. Doesn't that go away? So there's no defined window here. It says when they must submit the request for this pop-up location, but it doesn't define a period of time because we go to live balloting. Live absentee goes live 18 days prior to the end of election season, and election season starts on the 46th day prior to the end of election season. But doesn't temporary balloting cease at 18 days? Temporary absentee balloting cease at 18 days?
Senator Grant, are you directing this to?
Senator Mitchell.
Okay, Senator Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. So to be clear, the reason we put in the May 31st date is so that the counties and the cities or whoever is administering this does have plenty of time to do it. So if there was any conflict, they can do it the 46th day out or the very first day of absentee voting. We tried to make this in a way that they could work together and everyone had plenty of time. So it doesn't have to be within the 18-day window. It can be, 3 weeks before, 4 weeks before, whatever works in terms of getting the process done is what they're able to do.
Thank you, Senator Mitchell.
Senator Grant?
Senator, thank you. I do have a follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what concerns me is when we talked about this last year of pop-up locations, our counties do a great job at determining the need based on the last election and determining where we need to grow and expand balloting locations. And so what concerns me is last year, one of the references from the nonprofit, nonpartisan entities that show up to testify exclusively on these is they called it a rock the vote. Today it wasn't called rock the vote, but the scenario and example was given that it's great, we list all the reasons that there's some barrier that we're talking about adults in college that have made it into college that somehow can't figure out how to use the 46 days of election season to request. We made it super easy to request a ballot and everything. So what it looks like is, and the biggest thing that concerns me is one of the statements was about it was a great event. I think the example in 2018, St. Paul College, it was a great event. We were able to provide education at the event, and I thought it was a polling place and not the opportunity. We can't do electioneering at a polling place. This is either the ability to collect ballots and the easy access, but this sounds like a Dropbox rally with electioneering. If the example given or the intent is on a college, because they have no easy way to vote in the 46 days of election season, but the description of where this occurred and why it worked so well is because the lack of information, right? All those things are to occur not at a polling place. And if we're going to convert an education facility, then how do we ensure that the electioneering isn't occurring prior to just, it's really there to just cast a ballot. So I'm a little confused that, is this just a polling location where they can drop off a ballot? Because that's all it is. Clearly it's not going to be live voting machines. And so is it purely going to be a polling place? Because that's not the description, and we heard the same thing last year, that we like to hold these events and so we can rally up the support. And in the description where this worked well in St. Paul was we could provide that information. That's great. That's not what we do at a polling place on Election Day.
Senator Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm a little confused as to the question in there, but I will do my best. So a voter registration drive would be a nonpartisan event. That is not what this is. This is a temporary one-day polling location that has to be requested in May so that the, whether it's the city or the county who's constituting it, they can work, they can find an appropriate location. It would follow the same rules for the 100 feet with no campaigning. This would be an election site on the campus. As to the point about, adults should figure it, I don't want to paraphrase, but I would say this is a little similar to what we do for seniors, because we actually go into certain types of senior communities and do one-day polling locations there, because we know that if people are in those certain facilities, they are less likely to have transportation, they are less likely to have different options, and so we do that there, and that is also part of state law, that we will go in, if you meet a certain criteria, we will go in and there will be one day of voting for a very similar reason, because we know people have trouble getting in, accessing. Sometimes they want to talk to a real live person who can answer, their questions about what they're doing and how to fill it out, or help them get registered if they don't need to. Again, election officials, not partisan people, not anything else. And I have known election judges I have worked with who have done this. They are professional, they are paid, and this is what they go in and do, and they do it at senior centers. And so similar to that, we are giving them the time to go in, to look at a site, to make sure it's disability accessible, to make sure it's accessible to everyone. And the other part of this is that this would be a one-day polling location, so it would not just be for the students. The faculty, if they were it goes by counties. So if you happen to live in the same county and be eligible to vote at that location, that would be an opportunity for staff and other people in the community too. But this would be a polling site. This is not, and I don't think I see anything in the language that would give that impression. This is not a rally or a registration drive or anything else. This is a one-day polling site.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Crandall.
Thank you, Senator Mitchell. I think that was the intent, what you just described. But your testifier, as the same thing we went through last year when we talked about pop-up locations, was a rock the vote or an activity. Yeah, we have 100 feet barrier in an education facility, so they just have to be down, an office at 110 feet to do the rock the vote or the rally, or to provide the education on what's missing. If it's supposed to be a polling place, those things are to happen outside of it. And if that truly is the case, then I think counties are better positioned to determine where the need is. And why is it that the counties haven't determined a need to establish a precinct within each of our large education facilities? That's what I'm missing here. So that's what they do. Our county people, they run elections based on the last election. They look and find out was there an overcapacity, right, or undercapacity, how to manage those resources. And so I think they do a really good job at it. And in this case, it looks like, well, but we just want one here. In a facility where we got young adults and we have 46 days. And so I worry about the transparency. One, at least it's May 31st, because we want to make sure that bipartisan election judges and ballot boards are there to make sure that everything's done on the up and up. So I worry about the comments of the testifiers, and it was consistent from last year that this is more than just a drop box or a voting location, a traditional polling place with all the standards put in place. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Grant. Any comments? Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to reiterate that our only consideration when polling places are determined is not just population. As I used with the analogy of senior centers, some of them might only have a small number of people voting, but we have determined in the state of Minnesota that if we have people that have an accessibility issue, that we want to make that something that we do for them. And so much like we go to some of these senior facilities and bring a one-day polling location, this would be very similar of reaching out to a population who has clearly said, we are having transportation issues, we are having accessibility issues, could you please give us this location for one day? And again, we're not doing it for the colleges that have, 5 people attending and everything's online. We are doing this for places that have at least 1,500 students, so we would have a large potential number that could go on that one day. We would make the day available for staff, other people at the university, other people in the community. So there should be a decent number of people that would be eligible and likely to go. But especially when we look at inclusivity, particularly students of color, students who are low income, who are also likely to be working, who are even more likely to not have those transportation means, we want to make sure that they have that opportunity, just like we do with other groups that we have identified that might not have, or that might have those barriers to vote. And so it is not just in the state of Minnesota population that always determines where we put locations.
Thank you, Senator Mitchell. I have Senators Rest, Swazinski, Anderson, and Limmer on deck here. So Senator Rest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Mitchell, this is a local government mandate. Who's going to pay for it?
Senator Mitchell.
Thank you for that question, Senator Rest. So we put some numbers in the back about what the in the packet about what the anticipated cost is. There was a large amount of money that went to some of the local offices, voters' offices last year to help provide for additional election outreach. So within that, there should be additional funds because of some of the money that was supplemented last year to do that. But I would also add, as we heard the one testifier say, some of these communities are also spending money in different ways. If they have to have transportation, shuttling people back and forth for the whole day, for example, that is another expense that is having to be borne. And this is also for general elections, so this would be every 2 years. The number of colleges on this list is, I think, about 50 that would meet this criteria, scattered around various portions of the state. So this would be a one-time expense every 2 years. And predominantly, the cost of carrying the equipment to the site and the election judges for the day. So in the grand scheme of what is spent on elections, I believe this would be pretty fractional. We also were trying to be mindful that it's not necessary that every location on the list, which is just a little over 50, as I mentioned, would request this. This is why we didn't actually make this a mandate that places have to have this if it is a school of this size. It is only if either the student body or the college says, we would have this need, because there might be some schools that say, you know, we have a large number of students that are commuting and we don't feel this would be very used. Then they don't request it, and then those resources aren't spent in that way. So that's why we didn't say they just have to do this. This is only if it comes at a request. And that's why we did it in that particular way, so that if be it the student body or the university itself just didn't feel like that would have made it worth its while, we are trying to be very mindful of those county resources, which is why we have a threshold and why we made it that it would only happen at a request where they feel that the students have that need.
So,
Senator Rest, follow up?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Mitchell, the fact of it is, if it is requested by a student organization or whoever is in the amendment here, it then becomes a county mandate. They have to do it. So it is a local government mandate under certain circumstances. And it seems to me that in some counties, it could be a hefty cost to provide this. And have you requested a fiscal note on what the cost is going to be, or a local impact note?
Senator Mitchell.
So my understanding was to request that type of a note, because it wouldn't be at the state level, would take about 3 to 6 months to get back. I'm looking at Ms. Frazier because she was in that meeting with me.
Senator Mitchell, we have some advice that we might be able to get from Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Senator Rest, there's not a fiscal note on this bill because there's no identifiable state cost, but as you say, there could be local costs. Those might be captured in a local impact note, but the process for that is a little bit cumbersome for how it would come back. It would be highly dependent on which jurisdictions responded. As you sort of suggest, there might be some counties that could see fairly high costs under a bill like this, whereas other counties might not at all. And unlike the fiscal note process, none of the entities who might be reached out to are under an obligation to respond as state agencies are for a fiscal note. So it would be possible to request a local impact note, but at this time, nobody has made that request.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Rest.
there may be a request for a local impact note. You know, just because something takes a long time is not a reason to not know what the answer is. And that might be an indication that we should ask the people that put local impact notes together to act more quickly. They don't, only certain people may request them. I'm one of them. It just doesn't seem to me, it may be very worthwhile, but the county has no recourse, and it can't say no. And it is not a negotiation. It is just, if these circumstances are met, then they have to provide it. And it may be very little cost. And of course, it is a government cost, elections are a government cost. They are not funded by donations from volunteers. So I'm just hesitant about adding yet one more mandate to local governments. And certainly, I'm on committees that want and that pass mandates. We all are. But I think we shouldn't do it without understanding that this is indeed a mandate. So thank you very much for taking my comments.
Senator Swedzinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got a lot to say. Well, not that much, but it'll be about 2 minutes, but it's a stream of consciousness kind of thing. Thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill forward. I've been thinking a lot during everybody's testimony, and one of the things my head keeps coming back to is we felt it necessary to give, that employers have to give their workers time off to go vote, because we thought it was important to instill that right to vote and that political efficacy and civic virtue and civic engagement in our workers. And as I see it, this just extends that to the university. In my case, when I was at the University of Minnesota, I loved Election Day because there were all these balloons and rallies and booths set up in the student union, and it was this festive spirit. And a lot of people like putting off voting until Election Day because they want to get all the information. And when you're walking around campus and there's a booth on this issue or that issue, and then on the day of the election, because some people at the U, and Minnesota in particular, they take 2 or 3 buses to get to campus. They're in classes from 8 to 1 o'clock. Then they have to go to their part-time on-campus jobs, and to have a place on campus on the day of the election for them to utilize. What a wonderful thing to say to our youth, that we care about your vote and we want to make it, and I don't want to say the phrase, we want to make it easier for you, because, voting should be something that's not just easy to do, but we should make it accessible. And I think your bill does that, and I just can't thank you enough, because this is a great idea for all those young people that want to participate in this wonderful thing called democracy, but on the day of the election, they maybe can squeeze in 10 minutes out of their day because they're just busy. And so, thank you.
Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just reading through these little letters of support, and reading one from the League of Minnesota Cities, their concern for the cost, as Senator Rest had already mentioned. They said, we thank you for the establishment of the voter fund last session of approximately $1.25 million. But their concern is it's spread over 87 counties. And so I figured it out, it's about $14,367.81. So to put a temporary polling place up is probably going to cost more than $14,000 for some counties where they might have more institutions to have to work with under that $14,000. So I'm just wondering where the extra money, as Senator Rest asked about, was going to come from to help those counties to meet that, meeting those, you said, I think 50 institutions that you approximately, and I'm just wondering, where are most of the institutions outstate and how many are there? Do you know?
Senator Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question, Senator Anderson. I mean, I have a list. Let's see, of the top. So to be frank, most of these are in Hennepin and Ramsey counties, although they are spread throughout the state. The Minnesota State University at Mankato happens to be in Blue Earth. St. Cloud State is in Stearns. Normandale, Anoka Ramsey Community College is one of the big ones in Anoka. So either around our big cities or kind of in the suburb collar of the metro is where most of them are. If I can address the cost issue again, it will also vary some. So for example, Hennepin County would probably bear more of this because it has more of the big universities. And one of the things that they talked about doing is actually if you could fit like a bus or something, because this wouldn't go in effect likely this election year, it would be 2026. And if they had time to outfit something, they could find, if they had 10 universities on the list and they could get everything outfitted, they could just go to one every day for a couple weeks, get all the requirements, and they kind of had a mobile unit with workers, and it would reduce the cost doing it that way. So it really depends on how a place decides to do it. The estimate I have from the Secretary of State office is they would have to coordinate logistics for the location, just go in and do a site survey, and that would depend some on the college. If the college, said we have this great site for you, we have everything set up, that's pretty easy. For the services, it depends a little bit whether they purchase or whether they continue to just purchase computers to kind of make it more efficient, or if they're always using paper ballots. But the estimate I have is about $1,700 per time, including all the paper ballots and the employees for the day. And again, that's a 2-year cost. Like, we are only doing this for general statewide elections. So this would only be the general election, only every 2 years, and it would not apply to every county. So even if we look at that fund would stretch a long way before that would get chipped into with doing this. And in the meantime, obviously, if we have other costs and considerations, but I would like to reemphasize, we have already decided this is a priority for us when we do it for other groups. When we go out and do the exact same things for seniors, people don't seem to think that's not a good idea, and the costs would be very similar. And so I guess my challenge would be, why wouldn't we do this for young people as well who are in a similar situation of having trouble with access to transportation? I will also say, especially for some of the outer state places, there are some balances in here if it is mostly a commuter school versus if it is somewhere where a lot of people are on campus, living on campus, and might not have the transportation. So those might be schools that are less likely to have this request anyway, versus like when I went to the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, a lot of people didn't have that transportation because everything was close. Some of the outstate schools are less in that situation, so they might be less likely to request this because the students do have the transportation and do have access to the polling places, perhaps a little bit better than schools where more people live on campus.
Follow-up.
Follow-up, Senator Henderson?
Thank you. I would like to ask a question of the Secretary of State's office, Ms. Freeman. Mr. Chair, Ms. Freeman, I take it on every election that you get comments back to your office as to how things are going from different locations from across the state. And I'm interested to know from your vantage point and from the Office of Secretary of State, how many complaints do you get regarding the lack of students being able to vote at their particular locations? Could you give me an estimate of how many people complain to your office about that? And do you have some examples?
Ms. Freeman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Anderson. So I don't have a number of how many of those complaints we might receive, but I do know that we do get feedback from college communities each year. One specific example that I can give is out in Morris, Minnesota. Previously, there was a polling location that was on campus with redistricting, and I don't remember exactly the details of why, but the polling location on election day was moved off of campus, and the student voting rate and accessibility for students did decrease. And we do continue to hear about that situation out in Morris, Minnesota, as just one example. So we do hear about it, but I don't have an exact number.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Anderson.
Ms. Freeman, so that polling place was moved by the county, or was it moved by the University of Minnesota Morris?
Ms. Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Anderson. The cities are the ones, cities or townships are the ones who establish polling places for their jurisdiction. And so, like I said, I don't know what all went into that decision, but the city of Morris would have been the one that sets those polling locations.
And how far in
Senator
advance, Mr. Chair, how far in advance was that notified or made known to the voters that that was, the polling place was going to be moved?
Ms. Freeman.
Thank you, Chair and Senator Anderson. Polling places, it's required that changes are made by December 31st for the next year. So that decision would have been made by December 31st. In case there's anyone super technical, I think the change is slightly different as we head into a redistricting year, but yeah.
Thank you.
Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I ask a question, I'd like to ask a question to council. Is there any location in Minnesota where in a precinct there's more than one polling location per precinct? Outside of the supplemental methods that we allow voting for 45 days in mail-in ballots or drop boxes or senior homes.
Mr. Chair and Senator Limmer, are you talking about like combined polling places? There is such a thing as a combined polling place.
No.
That's not what you're talking about.
It's my understanding that every precinct has one polling place.
Oh, I see.
And you know of any alternative or anything that's recognized that would put more than one polling place per precinct anywhere in the state of Minnesota, outside of the supplemental methods?
I see. Mr. Chair and Senator Limmer, aside from the supplemental polling places that we're talking about, there's early voting and early absentee voting where you can go to an additional, but that's not in the precinct, which is what you're asking about. So there's nothing that I can think of. I see Ms. Freeman shaking her head no. So I would say no.
So if I get this right, if this bill passed, this would allow more than one polling location in specific precincts. So if one wanted to maximize a vote of a certain classification of voter, one could do that. Perhaps it affects an election in a very small town, maybe a college town. College voters might have a maximum population outsizing the citizens that actually pay the taxes in that little town. And I just think that that might be a difficulty in the concept of equal representation. The way we draw precinct lines is based on redistricting. And the concept of equality is principal to redistricting. we count out the votes potential in every precinct and try to make those districts and precincts as equal as possible. So maximizing a vote in one precinct and disregarding other precincts, I can't help but think that this garners a principle of well, it certainly questions or violates a principle of equal representation. Maximizing the potential of one specific location over a neighboring one, I don't think is in the right direction that we should be going. Minnesota is probably one of the most open states and encouraging states to vote. 45 days to cast a ballot versus the difficulty of a student that has trouble finding 45 minutes to vote in a 45-day period of time. I find that kind of hard to fathom. I don't have a college campus in my district, but I would tend to think that many people in my district who are raising children, working 2 or 3 jobs because of the inflationary rate that puts a burden on them in today's world, has just as difficult a time finding that time to vote. But they do. It's the responsibility of good citizenship. By law, it's an adult thing to do. And if you want to get to that point of participating in a democracy, you find time to do it. You find time to do it. You prioritize. But putting 2 polling places in one precinct at the expense of others, unless of course we're going to put 2 polling places in every precinct, then we get back to the equality theme. But right now, I don't believe that holds an equality theme in this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Mitchell, any comments?
Yes, so I would like to clarify a little bit how early voting is technically a form of absentee voting, and I'd like to clarify a little bit about how that process works. So, and I will use my city as my example because I know it best. So Woodbury, for example, has 16 precincts, and it sits in Washington County, which I don't know how many precincts there are. There's probably at least 100 through the whole county. Early voting through the whole county, there are 5 sites. One of them happens to be in Woodbury. So it does not matter where in the county you live. For early voting, you can go to any of those sites because they keep any of the ballots on hand. And yes, that site will be in a precinct, but it is not voting for that precinct. It is voting for the whole county. If you are a student at, so when I went to the University of Minnesota, which was in Hennepin County, I chose to keep, lived there part, commuted part. I chose to keep my home of record in Woodbury, so I voted in Woodbury. I also had access to transportation. Other students who lived on campus and who maybe came from another part of Hennepin County or decided that that was going to now be their permanent residence, they would be able to vote anywhere at an early voting site in Hennepin County. So if we are looking at, again, the Minneapolis campus of the University of Minnesota, it would only be the students that were eligible in that area to vote. If they still had their residency somewhere else, then that is where they should get the absentee ballot and vote. And this would be a one-day location, much like other locations have their early voting sites for the entire period. This would be exactly the same as that, but just for a one-day period at this site. Again, this is not college students not being able to be adults and not being responsible and not anything else. This is literally that some of them do not have access to transportation that is regular, and if those other early voting sites are not nearby, because I live in a really long county and there's only 5 for early. And then that day of in their precinct, they're working, they're in school. Unlike jobs, schools do not give you the day off to vote. You still have to attend class. So if for some reason it isn't a place they cannot get to it, this one day of early voting gives them the opportunity. But they still have to meet all the other same criteria as anyone who votes at any early voting location does. In addition, as I said, it would be accessible to anyone in that area who wanted to early absentee vote, so it could potentially bring in more people from the area. Again, they would still have to live in the same county and still be fully eligible, but it just gives them more access and opportunity. It does not change who is eligible to vote in an area or anything of that level, so it would not change the dynamics of a population for voting purposes.
Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In Sherburne County, where I live, there's one area to do early voting in the entire county. It's down in Elk River. It's about a 30-minute or close to 30-minute drive from my house. There's a special election happening in my district, and early voting is starting this weekend. And I'm going to go make the drive down to do early voting this weekend, because the special primary is on the 29th, on Thursday, and I have a safer bet at voting early this weekend than trying to hope that our legislative calendar finishes Thursday night in time for me to get back to district. So we make those commitments. I did have one question that I wanted to ask Senator Mitchell. You've talked about, you picked a number of 1,500 for colleges, and then you've also talked about basically online schools or schools that have an essential number of 0 as far as in-person schooling. Is there anybody that falls right under that 1,500 threshold? There is a gap in there. Is there a school that lands just underneath 1,500? Like, what's the school that, is there an in-person school that misses that cutoff date that still has a 1,000 to 1,499 sized student body?
Senator Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Matthews. And I would like to say I'm in the same boat. I am an election judge, so I always have to early vote because I can never vote. I'm always assigned to a different precinct. So I will be doing the same thing for the presidential primary in a few weeks. I already had to early vote for that. So the cutoff based on the numbers of schools we have in Minnesota, 1,500 basically excluded the bottom third because, again, a number had to be selected, and we're looking at like what is the number so that it's not such a small population, that it's a large enough population that it makes it worth its while. I am happy to hear other numbers. There just had to be a number to make it worthwhile. So the next one down from 1,500 at 1,580, the last one that is on the list is Anoka Technical College, and the one at 1465, the first one that cuts off is in Stearns County, the College of St. Benedict. I will say between 1,000 and 1,500, there are only 4 schools. So if someone wanted to drop it to that, but then the numbers drop off exponentially, and we start getting in some like beauty schools and things like that. That's why we were trying to go for the larger numbers so that it really brought in the places that were more likely to have people living on campus and have that transportation challenge. But I am happy to hear other ideas on that.
Appreciate it. It gives me at least a picture of what we're looking at with the number that's in there now. And Mr. Chair, I then want to offer an amendment. I'd like to offer the A4 amendment, please.
We'll get a copy of the amendment to Senator Mitchell. and it looks like it's pretty short, so perhaps Senator Matthews can describe it as it's being passed out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As it's getting passed out, the amendment is a very simple one. It can help add more diversity to the bill. Senator Mitchell's identified a need for more voter outreach on college campuses, and all of the same arguments she made in support of that and that the Secretary of State's office made in support of that can also be applied to churches, synagogues, other places of worship. I've grown up all my years and heard many statistics about some of the voter turnout in those communities are sometimes lower than the norm. And if we are wanting to help increase access to voting, people participating in our democracy, I think that the idea can be expanded to more areas that could have the same opportunity of having the ability to do the absentee voting at the place where they go to worship. So I want to throw this out there to kind of help expand on this idea and would appreciate members' support of the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Matthews. Senator Mitchell, have you looked at the bill or at the amendment? Has this been presented to you? Are you familiar enough with it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is my first time seeing it. I love any way that we can expand voter participation. My particular concern with the amendment would be that unlike our bill where we very thoughtfully put in a number for capacity and also can say exactly how many places and where that this would be impacted, I don't see anything in here that would show how many places potentially would have the polling location, or that there would be any size requirement. If it's 2 people coming together, could that be a place of worship? And then, of course, it does not raise the key issue here, which we are trying to take a group of people who are saying they do not have access to transportation, and make sure that they have a polling place that is accessible. I am assuming that if people are going to their place of worship, they had some sort of transportation to get there, which could easily relate to transportation to get them to the early polling location. So I don't see it meeting the same needs as this particular bill.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Matthews, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to respond, I didn't know about the 1,500 number till we got here to committee. If you're open to the topic, I'd encourage you to adopt it into the bill. Be happy to keep working with you on figuring out what a level may be. Same kind of decision. Will everybody want to be doing this? No. Are there areas that could be identified that would need it? Yes. And if you talk about transportation, if any of you have known of or worked on a church with a bus ministry, it's exactly the same process. Not everybody that attends a church or place of worship necessarily has that type of transportation access that we're working on. So would encourage members to support it and would ask for a roll call in this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Matthews. I believe we have a question on the amendment from Senator Westlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure that this amendment is ready. I think it needs some work. And my advice, I guess it sounds like Senator Mitchell is willing to have some additional conversations with Senator Matthews. I think without having some threshold number that we're working from here, I think that literally a church could have 5 members and apparently request this. But I don't think the amendment is ready for us to take it up today, and I would encourage members to vote no, and Senator Matthews can continue to work with Senator Mitchell.
Thank you, Senator Westlin. Senator Mitchell, do you have any comments on that particular question?
I would concur with Senator Westlin, although, as I said, ways we can get voters more engaged. As a final note, as I encourage a no vote on this, Again, this is based on where people are living, and we're trying to make sure that where they are saying they live and are domiciled and are intending to vote, that they have access at that location, which I think is different from a church that they go to. We are trying to make sure that where they live, much like we do with senior centers, that we meet them where they are, where they live, if they don't have the transportation to get anywhere else.
Senator Rest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Matthews, Senator Mitchell. I have the same problem with your amendment that I have with the bill, and that is the mandate on the counties, or who's paying for the county taxpayers paying for this without even knowing how much. They just have to pay for it. And I don't see that that is that's a fair imposition on the county, either from a place of worship or from an institution of higher learning. I appreciate that as you indicated, that you had not seen just as Senator Mitchell had not seen this amendment, you had not seen the DE amendment that put in it a level of population of the school. So I'm not going to support your amendment, but not because it's an additional place. I mean, only because of the mandate that I think is just not fair.
Senator Limmer on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the very same reasons that I spoke of having 2 polling places in 1 precinct, I have to oppose this amendment. I'm going to be pure and oppose anything that would put an unequal polling location, an extra polling location in 1 precinct, and ignoring other precincts with the same treatment. Again, like I said, if we put 2 polling places in every precinct, then I would be fine with it. But this does the very same thing that the bill does, and structurally, I can't support it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Marty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Matthews, most places of worship don't have anybody living there. I think this bill is, I was sort of assuming it was mainly meant for residential students who live there and can vote there. The place I worship is in a different county. I couldn't even use it for early voting. I mean, I guess I just think that we could say grocery stores. I mean, anything. This is kind of ridiculing, I think, what, maybe it's not intended that way, but it seems to be ridiculing the purpose of the bill, which is to take people who are not always easily able to go vote to make it easier for them to vote. And I think the bill is a good attempt at doing that. I think saying place where in many cases not a single person lives is a strange place to put a polling place if many of the people who might be there are not living right in the neighborhood. In a neighborhood area, maybe so, but there's no restriction on this whatsoever. And even the larger places of worship that may have 1,500 people or more, a whole lot of those are people coming from other counties and other further away distances. So it doesn't seem to make any sense to pick this kind of a location.
Thank you, Senator Marty. Senator Port, did you still have questions? Okay. All right. The roll call has been requested and the amendment has been moved. So the committee assistant will take the roll.
Senator Carlson.
No.
Senator Westlin.
No.
Senator Curran.
Yes.
Senator Anderson.
Yes.
Senator Barr.
Aye.
Senator Boldon.
No.
Senator Swazinski.
No.
Senator Dorning. No. Senator Limmer.
No.
Senator Marty. No. Senator Matthews.
Yes.
Senator Mitchell.
No?
Senator Port.
No.
Senator Rest. No. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Senator Rest?
I said no.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear you, I apologize.
There being 4 ayes and 10 nays, the amendment is not adopted. Okay. Senator Port, did you want to, you got a question now? Okay, thank you.
I want to thank you for bringing this bill, Senator Mitchell. I think civic engagement that starts at a young age is more likely to persist through your whole life. I think putting focuses on our young people is a positive move for our democracy. We don't look down on a county seat for having an absentee ballot location or a pop-up location. We don't look down on a senior center having a temporary voting location. It seems outrageous to me to suggest that eligible students having the right to vote in their location would somehow skew an election in some unfair way. I'm not entirely clear about what was being insinuated there, but I do have to disagree with Senator Swazinski. I think voting should be easy. We should remove barriers to voting. If you're an eligible voter, you should be able to vote easily where you live, within your schedule, in the way that you choose. I appreciate you bringing this bill, Senator Mitchell. Mr. Chair, I ask that we move the bill.
Thank you. The bill has been moved.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, Senator Grant.
do we have an opportunity, if we have other amendments, to put forth each amendment so they're heard?
Sure. Senator Grant, sure. Yes, you do. I would advise if there are amendments that we have them in our packet or bring them to us so that we know that we've got more work to do. So,
Mr. Chair, I didn't
Grant.
know this is a process to speed or race through critical ideas without at least having heard and have the opportunity to put forth an amendment.
Yep. Senator Grant, do you have an amendment?
I do. I'd like to move the A5 amendment.
Senator Grant moves the A5 amendment. We'll get a copy of it to Senator Mitchell.
Mr. Chair, we can talk, well, Senator Mitchell's receiving it. It's a pretty simple one. I was going to offer Senator Rest toss the amendment over to her, and it addresses the kind of the foundational issue that we talked about is that the counties do a great job at planning for elections. And so if they determine a need, they set the budget, and they have the finance for that, and they're well thought out and well planned, as we've heard consistently by every member on this committee. Throwing this out there is, again, it is an unfunded mandate that Senator Rest brought up, and I think we all agree. And so with this, all it does is requires the schools to reimburse the counties if they decide to have this extra privilege for their student body, that they could pick up and reimburse the county for those costs. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'd encourage a green vote as well as request a roll call.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Chair. And I would encourage a no vote on this for a couple of reasons. First, again, we have some estimates as to what this could cost. It would be relatively low, only every couple years. And once we have an idea, this would be something that going forward we could work with the counties on. But I think it would be inappropriate because, one, as I said, we do a very similar thing at senior facilities, and we don't ask the senior facilities to pay for that. We don't ask different facilities to pay to let people vote, especially in the issue of what is proposed here. It would not just necessarily be the students or the staff that would be voting. A pop-up location that was available for a day would be available for anyone within the county that it was located in. So it would also be bringing outside people into that particular polling place possibly. And so to ask a post-secondary institution to pay for anyone in that local community to come out and vote, I think just doesn't meet the precedents that we've ever had of having other institutions pay for people to come and vote, especially given in this particular case, it would be anyone in the public that would be allowed at that polling location.
Thank you, Senator Mitchell. Senator Westlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to encourage a no vote for this. I am struggling mightily today to understand why there is such a difficulty with the concept that we already passed last year of pop-up locations for early voting. This is a one-day opportunity for a location to be at a school. Eligible voters have a right to vote. Counties are required to administer those. As Senator Mitchell has noted, we don't require anybody else to pay for their polling places. I suspect this might have some legal challenges to it, but I guess I'm fundamentally struggling with why there seems to be such resistance to making it possible for eligible voters to exercise the franchise by potentially, if it's requested, providing a one-day pop-up location at a school. We've already provided for these temporary locations. I just don't understand why people really don't want students to vote, because to me, that's what this sounds like. And I'm going to guess the students out there listening to this, that's what it sounds like to them as well. But this amendment, I mean, if we're going to start charging post-secondary institutions, then maybe we should start charging everybody else for it, but I don't think that's probably constitutional. I don't know, it's probably not legal. Vote no.
Mr. Chair, prior to that,
Senator Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Westlin. I appreciate the comments on the pop-up locations. First off, the original acceptance of a pop-up location was unnecessary. So we've been able to do this, and we've encouraged easy access to vote. It's expanded to 46 days. And to say that our counties are unable to facilitate and put the appropriate polling locations where necessary. We want it easy to vote, and it serves easy to vote. Everybody gets mail, everything that we've done in this session has gone to solve a problem or solutions again to problems that don't exist. And all under the guise that it's more compassionate, that we don't believe that somebody can get there. That's not true. And we just want to make sure we haven't even finished and gotten the rules of all of the changes of the greatest election system you keep telling us we have. We've written every rule. We don't even know what it is, and we're making all these additional drastic changes to a process that we haven't even gone through an election cycle with the last year's rules. We just want to make sure it's easy to vote, hard to cheat, and so believable that both sides trust the results. So thank you. I encourage a green vote.
Thank you, Senator Cran. We don't vote with colors on this in the committee here, but
A yes vote, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
The committee, LA will take the roll.
Senator Carlson.
No.
Senator Westlin.
No.
Senator Curran.
Yes.
Senator Anderson.
Yes.
Senator Barr.
Aye.
Senator Boldon.
No.
Senator Swazinski.
No.
Senator Dorning. Senator Limmer.
Yes.
Senator Marty.
No.
Senator Matthews.
Yes.
Senator Mitchell.
No.
Senator Port.
No.
Senator Rest.
Yes.
There being 7 ayes and 7 nays, the amendment does not prevail.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move the A6 amendment.
Sorry, what's your number?
Sorry, the A6 amendment.
A6. I want to remind the committee here that we have 2 more bills, and we will stay until we're done.
Mr. Chair, this one, we can describe it while we're waiting. So
Okay.
what this does is we keep talking about the needs and I think the business case for moving this forward. All this simply does is requires a school to submit a petition signed by 5% of the student body demonstrating a need for a temporary polling place. That it's actually student-driven need and should be an easy threshold to meet, and at least then we've determined that the students are requesting this capability and not a group of, not a small handful of people making the decisions on their behalf. So that's all it does, and I encourage a green vote and, or yes vote, and request a roll call. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Grant. Senator Mitchell, have you read the amendment? And do you have any reactions to it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would encourage a no vote on this because one of the venues for this is for the student governing body to put in this request, which they're usually an elected student governing body representing the students, so they would already have that pulse as to whether or not the students needed that. Same thing with the administration. The administration is going to know what the status of their students are, if they have a lot that live on campus without transportation or off campus. Trying to go around to a university like the top one on the list is the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, 55,000 people. So you would be talking about having to collect 5%, about 2,500 signatures every time you wanted to have a pop-up. That just seems really onerous when we have already given a couple venues of places between either the administration or the student governing body of groups that should have a pulse onto whether or not this is needed by the students.
Senator Westlin, question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it appears that this amendment was not discussed with Senator Mitchell. I think what Senator Mitchell raised is that early voting options and polling places can occur in any number of different places established by the county, that the post-secondary institution is required to have a location, if this happens, in a place that is accessible to the public. My understanding, Senator Carlson, Senator Mitchell, was that that polling place would not be limited just to students. Is that correct?
Senator Mitchell.
Yes, and I would like to add, possibly to your point, that with the May 31st requirement, the requesting body from 1 year could change with the students. So it would be even hard if you're getting 5% and you know, 1 whole year is graduating. When you have to request, it would be different potential signatures by the time the election rolled around. So I think asking the student governing body in the school is also a much cleaner option. But yes, this could be used by the public and the staff as well.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Westlin.
Again, I don't think that this amendment really contemplates or understands the way that early voting is working and the fact that there may be multiple locations available, and this is just saying for one day a location should be at an institution. If it's requested by the institution or the student government, it is a location for early voting that is available to any eligible voter in that county. And again, I don't think that this amendment merits our consideration or a yes vote today, and I ask people to vote no.
Christie will take the roll.
Senator Carlson,
No.
Senator Westlin.
No.
Senator Curran,
Yes.
Senator Anderson. Yes. Senator Barr,
Aye.
Senator Boldon,
No.
Senator Swazinski.
No.
Senator Dorning. Yes. Senator Limmer,
Yes.
Senator Marty. No. Senator Matthews,
Yes.
Senator Mitchell,
No?
Senator Port,
No.
Senator Rest.
I pass.
There being 6 ayes and 7 nays, the amendment does not prevail. I need to say something here, Senator Curran. You have amendments, and each of them has kind of a kernel that I really like. But, when you add up the pros and cons, there's something that tips it over to the other side. And, Senator Matthews, I think, had a good idea of having other locations that might have a population that may want to vote that way. But then there's another kernel there that, we've discussed having precincts in churches being somewhat of a negative, and that would go the other way. So, but I kind of like some of these ideas that are coming out here, but, on the greater side, perhaps, Senator Cran, if you would have worked with Senator Mitchell, maybe we would have had something there, especially with this last one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We appreciate it. We used to have a standard in the Senate and in the legislature that we would only pass things that were masterfully deliberated and bipartisan. And so that was when we determined we had a need, we can come together to work out those great ideas. But those days appear to have passed. And so we'd love to go back to that standard where we had an opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Senator Cran, as would I. Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to kind of clear up the discussion from earlier, how this looks to the outside is we're putting in polling locations in places that are predominantly overwhelming Democrat voters. So people ask on the outside, is this about democracy or is this about Democrats? The only polling locations that we want to institute, and this would be one thing if our institutions of higher learning gave a broad range of ideas, which I think they should be doing, that had a good number of proponents on both sides that gave students the pros and cons of their position, but they show overwhelmingly the vast majority are very, very extreme one direction. And I just sat through college classes myself and was shocked by some of the rhetoric that I heard. So this bill purports after the months of lecture from only one direction, here's a ballot at this spot, now go vote. And it's interesting that the people that discuss, as you do, Mr. Chair, about more locations, easy access, but only if it's the easy access that we want to have, that we approve of. And you voted down my amendment, which you say has some merit on it, to expand that reach to others. So because of that, and then it is incorrect to say that we don't want students to vote, because they clearly have the same equal access to every polling location that the rest of us have. And I have students that are core members on my campaign team. Of course I want our young people to vote. I don't want any member going back here and repeating in their district, oh, those awful Republicans in St. Paul want to stop students from voting. I'm sure someone's going to try saying that. It's not true. But Mr. Chair, this is to point out, do we want early access for people to vote? Or do we just want early access for the people that we want to vote for us? And that's what this bill seems to be showing. That's why I'm not voting for it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Matthews. Senator Westlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we're talking about eligible voters voting, I get a little, it's weird to me that people think that the only people that go to college are Democrats. And it's weird to me to suggest that if a particular institution does have eligible voters who happen to be Democrats, that somehow they should be less enfranchised than other people. I do want to clear up a couple of things here because I have gotten some information. Some of the institutions that would be impacted like this by this bill are Southwest Minnesota State in Lyon County. Pretty sure that's not a bastion of Democratic voters. Minnesota State Community Tech in Otter Tail, Minnesota State Moorhead, Central Lakes, and Crow Wing. Apparently 29 out of the 52 colleges that would be affected by this are not in the 7 metro area. And I'm pretty sure that all of those voters, regardless of who they vote for, would like the opportunity to request a one-day early voting location on their campus. And it doesn't matter whether somebody's voting Republican or DFL in the election. This is about eligible voters being able to vote, period. So, and this idea that we're somehow going to say that we're going to start looking at this based on who we think the voters might be, I think is dangerous ground for us to be treading. In any event, I support the bill. If there are those of you who have ideas, I'm sure Senator Mitchell would be more than happy to speak with you. And I just lastly want to say that bipartisanship is a two-way street. And I often hear the term used around here in a way that reminds me of a quote from The Princess Bride. You keep using that word, I do not think it means what you think it means. And bipartisanship literally is not just our responsibility to be bipartisan, but that falls to everyone. That is a responsibility for all of us. And I think we showed last week, I don't know if it's going to happen again today now, but we showed last week, you know, we had a doxing bill, had unanimous support. I have a technical amendment today, I think we'll have unanimous support. On some of these other bills, you see them coming up. I know that I always try to leave a space open for a Republican co-author, and I assume, again, that Senator Mitchell would be happy to have continuing conversations and take in ideas from colleagues, regardless of what side of the aisle they are on. But when we are talking about making it possible for eligible voters to vote, I think we need to stay focused on that and the fact that our students, like anyone else, have the right to vote and should be able to do so. One pop-up, one day.
Thank you, Senator Westlin. We have Senator Dornick has something to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to vote no on this bill, and it's not about voting, it's about mandates. You know, we had mandate after mandate, and our communities in greater Minnesota are struggling with budgets, and the state continues to seem to ignore that. So it's not about voting, it's about mandates. But to the point of bipartisanship, you know, some of our older members here that were here when we had bipartisan support on election bills because they were so important. And they wouldn't pass one without it. Governor Dayton, Governor Pawlenty, with the bipartisan support because elections and the way we run them are so important that we want to have all voices. And the Senate majority is a majority by about 300 votes. That's it. So as far as how I see it, I've been on the majority for 2 years and now the minority for 1. And I like to quote James Madison. We got attorneys that are here and read better and understand some of his writings better than I do. But he warned about the majority suppressing the minority. So I'd encourage maybe some of you to read that again and to remember the warnings they gave us. And a lot of the legislation I've been involved in and worked with, tried to work, I'm a pretty easygoing person. I want to sign on to a bill, but many times I can't because it goes against the views of my district, and I represent my district. I don't represent my party. And Washington wrote about that in his farewell address also. So I think that we need to look back to the past and listen to the voices of the ones that wrote the Constitution. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Corning. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we're just talking about bipartisanship and democracy now, then can I ask that we move the bill, please?
Thank you. Senator Port moves the bill. The committee legislative assistant will take the roll.
Senator Carlson.
Yes.
Senator Westlin.
Yes.
Senator Curran.
No.
Senator Anderson.
No.
Senator Barr.
No.
Senator Boldon.
Aye.
Senator Swazinski.
Yep.
Senator Dorning.
No.
Senator Limmer.
No.
Senator Marty. Yes. Senator Matthews.
No.
Senator Mitchell.
Yes.
Senator Port.
Yes.
Senator Rust.
Pass.
There being 7 ayes and 6 nays, the bill has prevailed and will be forwarded to the Higher Ed Committee. Thank you, Senator.
That wasn't the motion, was it? She
Pardon?
just moved the bill. She didn't ask for it to be re-referred to higher ed.
Do we have to include that in the motion? We usually don't.
I think you do. I mean, otherwise, when you make the motion, the bill goes to the floor. You can ask counsel, but I do believe I'm right.
Counsel says you're correct. We will redo the vote.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Somebody needs to move to reconsider.
just a quick question was, if I missed it, but did somebody request a roll call? No. Okay. I don't recall anybody that requested a roll call. So that was the part that is also confusing.
We thought we heard that here in somebody's early statement. Senator Port.
And it has to be as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask that the bill be referred as amended to higher ed.
We have to reconsider.
Move that we reconsider the motion.
Thank you. There's a motion to reconsider the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
No. The ayes have it. The bill is reconsidered. And now, Senator Port.
Mr. Chair, I ask that we move the bill as amended to higher ed.
Senator Port moves the bill as amended to higher education.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Limmer.
Just a point, usually we make the motion recommended to pass or with no recommendation. I didn't hear any recommendation at all. So could we clarify that motion?
Senator Port, can you clarify the motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we move the bill to be recommended to pass
As amended.
and sent to higher ed.
And I guess I need to clarify, you are not asking for a roll call?
No.
Okay. Senator Port moves the bill as amended to be re-referred to the, recommended to pass and re-referred to the Higher Education Committee. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay.
No.
The ayes have it. The bill is recommended to pass and forwarded to the Higher Education Committee. Oh. Okay. Next bill is Senate File 3457, Senator Westlin.
I keep taking over your thing. Sorry. I should put mine up there. I usually do that. I don't usually have it like that. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have an author's amendment. It is the A1 amendment. I would like to move that amendment.
And this is your first committee, Senator Westlin?
It is, Senator
Okay,
Carlson.
and you have the A1 author's amendment. Do we have that in our packets? All in favor of the A1 amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay? The amendment, author's amendment is approved. And Senator Westlin, please continue with your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is in the nature of a technical correction. Last year, we took up a bill that was included in the omnibus regarding reporting requirements for principal reports. And for reasons that escape me, it was not my preference. The threshold was that the principal report total must be rounded to the nearest $9,000. Certainly, in speaking with stakeholders, $9,000 as a rounding number is a little bit unwieldy. Originally, this bill as presented would have required no rounding. However, I have spoken with stakeholder groups earlier today, and we agreed, and I believe they agreed as well, to change that to $5,000. So what the amendment does is requires that the principal must report the total amount rounded to the nearest $5,000 rather than $9,000. And I believe there are a couple of testifiers.
Paul Cassidy from the Minnesota Government Relations Council, or Kate Glasser, I see, from Legislative Chair from the Minnesota Government Relations Council.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Please state your name for the record and continue with your testimony.
Yes, thank you. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kate Klossner, and I am the Legislative Chair for the Minnesota Government Relations Council, or MGRC, as you may have heard of. MGRC is a nonprofit statewide trade organization that represents over 500 government and public relations professionals. Our diverse membership includes sole proprietors, nonprofits, local governments, trade associations, law firms, and businesses that are all united with one single mission, and that's in support of influencing public policy through ethical representation. In support of our mission, we have maintained a positive relationship with the Minnesota Campaign Finance Board, and we offer numerous educational opportunities for our members to help them stay up to date on compliance issues and any other emerging issues. We are very grateful that the CFB has been willing to engage with MGRC and with the collaboration that we've had with them over the last few years. MGRC met with Senator Westlin this morning to present our concerns at removing the rounding requirement for principal lobbyists. We appreciate her willingness to hear our concerns, and we do support her amendment that sets the principal rounding requirement at $5,000. The rounding requirement, we feel, is an ethical and transparency reporting requirement that allows good faith estimates on compensation and other very difficult to track expenditures. Without a rounding requirement, it would have a disproportionate effect on in-house government relation professionals, association professionals, and those that lead nonprofits. We look forward to continuing to work with Senator Westlin, Chair Carlson, and the rest of this committee on this issue or any others that may come up throughout the year. So thank you for providing MGRC the opportunity to testify in this amendment, and I'll happily answer any questions.
A question from Senator Marty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I fail to understand why a rounding requirement makes it easier to do. You have to make you're making an estimate of how much it is. If it's $56,000, I mean, it seems to me that saying, well, you're making your estimate, $56,000. It may not be 100% accurate, but it's the most accurate you can do. I mean, when you fill out tax forms and everything, you have to make estimates of things. You do the best you can. I'm not sure how this makes it more, it doesn't make it more accurate in any way. I just think when you fill out tax forms and so on, you make an estimate, you use your best estimate you can. This seems to just be more vague because you can do anything within that $5,000 amount.
Senator Mitchell.
Mr. Westlin, I know.
Sorry,
we all
Senator
look
Westlin.
She's much younger than I am. I will take a stab at it and let my experts here. The question here was rounding to the nearest 9,000, which I think is actually in and of itself confusing, or rounding to the nearest 5,000. And so I understand that there may be a philosophical question about whether there should be rounding at all, but I would say that's not the question before us today. The question is, do we want people to try to figure out what the nearest 9,000 is or the nearest 5,000? And people do keep records, and it's probably a lot easier for them to estimate to 5,000 than in an oddball number like 9,000. But
Madam, Mr. Chair, I guess it was for the witnesses because I guess I like the bill as originally done because, but they're saying they came in and asked for a rounding error because it was simpler or something, and I'm not sure what that is, and that's what I was guessing what my question was. I know the bill has 5,000. I'm just curious why a rounding number is helpful.
Mr. Cassidy.
Mr. Chair, Senator Marty, Paul Cassidy with the Stinson Law Firm. We represent the MGRC at the Capitol. I think the answer to that question is there always has been a cushion in reporting. I think it recognizes that lobbyists and lobbying organizations and lobbyist principals do a best efforts to report things accurately. I also think it's a recognition that reporting sometimes can be an art rather than a science. It is not always exact. And I'll use the two examples sitting at this table. My colleague represents a client that is in multiple states, and she represents them in each one of them. And in the state of Minnesota, she does advocate on their behalf as well, but it's not always advocating on, for or against a piece of legislation. It might be for educational purposes and not have a direct impact on active legislation. I'm the same way. My firm represents a number of clients here at the Capitol. We don't always advocate for or against a piece of legislation. We're here for a lot of different reasons. I think the third example is if you look at nonprofits that operate in our space, a lot of them wear a lot of different hats. They're small nonprofits that are lobbyist principals. They're required to report just like we are, just like our clients are, but they wear multiple hats. They get the coffee, they make the copies, they're their own PR firm, they're their own communications firm, and yet they obviously educate and lobby on behalf of, and advocate on behalf of legislation as well.
Mr. Chair.
Follow-up.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Mr. Cassidy, it seems to me you're saying, well, we really don't have a very good estimate. It's really hard, so we'll just, I mean, the original one when it was put in place at $20,000 was because they didn't want to report an accurate number. So we'll range $20,000, which I'm glad it moved down to 9 and maybe down to 5 here. I'm just not sure why, because you're saying it's complicated to figure out how you do it, but every law firm, everybody else has to portion time and do their best estimate for it. And when you file your taxes and you have to make your best estimate of something, it's kind of not like, well, you make your best estimate of it and, you know, we can round it to the nearest $5,000 or $20,000 or $9,000. People would have a tendency to round it down to the whatever number they choose. But I don't see how this makes it any more accurate, and how this does not make it more accurate. I don't see how this is any less difficult, because if you're going to make sure it's within 5,000, you got to know what it is. But whether it's people in multiple states or some things are lobbying, some things aren't, you have to make those time allocations and apportion it. And I'm not sure how this helps anything, but.
Senator Westlin, any?
Mr. Chair and Senator Marty, I think that that's a different philosophical question than the one that we have before us today, and I appreciate your opinions on this, and I think I know your opinions on this. I think that we have gone from 20,000 and now we're looking at 5,000. I do think that does place an additional burden on organizations to be a bit more precise. I think they had probably a lot more wiggle room in the past. My intention for bringing this, again, was I just felt that 9,000 was a strange number to be rounding to. I indicated I was definitely not interested in going above 9,000, and 5,000 seemed to be a more sensible number. And again, I appreciate, Senator Marty, that there's a different conversation that we may want to have about this, but I feel like that's not the conversation we're having today.
Thank you, Madam. Mr. Chair, Senator Westlin, I do support
Senator
the bill.
Marty.
I just think that it's kind of a bizarre way to say we don't think it's worth people putting in accurate numbers, but I support the bill as it is, so.
Thank you, Senator Marty. Senator Westlin, any final comments?
Absolutely none.
Okay, this bill is being laid over for possible inclusion in an omnibus bill. So thank you very much, and thank you,
Mr. Chair. Thank you.
And now.
We are now making a pitching substitution. Senator Carlson is going to be presenting today on Senate File 3555. Senator Carlson, once you are ready to go, please present your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have Senate File 3555, which is a change for some elevation of people in county offices, specifically the county attorney and the county sheriff. This started to be a very simple bill, and we found out there's a lot of things that were not correct with it. So we have an amendment that I'm looking for that amendment here in my package, that because I don't know the number of it.
Is that the A5, Senator?
The A5 amendment, yes. That's the
And-
author's amendment.
Okay, and this is the first committee the bill is being heard?
This is the first committee, thank you.
Great. Senator Carlson moves the A5 author's amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The amendment is adopted. Go ahead, Senator Carlson.
Okay. The Senate File 3555 authorizes special elections for county attorney and county sheriff. We've already added the author's amendment, and I have some testifiers here to clear up any questions and answer any questions, starting out with Matt Mausman from the Minnesota Intercounty Association. You can be first. Now, lest you be confused, the first person here was Commissioner Lori Halverson from Dakota County. And whichever you're going to speak first.
Do you want to speak first?
Madam
Massman?
Chair, thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Matt Mossman with the Minnesota Intercounty Association. Thanks for the opportunity to hear this bill today and to Senator Carlson for carrying the legislation. I'm going to be very brief and just thank Ms. Frazier and the Secretary of State's office for helping with the author's amendment and Ms. Stengel and staff just in terms of making sure that it works with updates that have been come along to statutes in recent years, as well as what we're trying to do here. And with that, I really think Commissioner Halverson has a lot of the insight and background as to what has brought this legislation forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Massman. And Ms. Halverson, would you go ahead and identify yourself for the record? Please be sure to sign in, both of you, on this sheet before you leave. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Lori Halverson. I'm Dakota County Commissioner, and I'm here today in support of Senate File 3555. This bill aims to provide some transparency and access for our voters when vacancies arise in key local election. So under current law, counties are required to appoint an individual to fill a vacancy if there's a vacancy in the office of county attorney or the sheriff. These are separate and distinct elected offices from county commissioners, and I will say I was faced with this as a brand new commissioner when we had a vacancy in our county attorney's office. And as we were going through the process, it really raised a concern for me that I was somehow in between the voters and an elected office that they had the right to choose. And so we started having conversations about how we can make this process better. When it comes to the county attorney and county sheriff's office, some folks are confused on why other county offices aren't delineated in this legislation. And these two particular offices have specific roles with the voters, but also with the county that other offices don't have. It also puts county commissioners in the position of authorizing or affirming the eligibility of folks who may seek appointment to this particular office. There are statutory requirements for these two offices that don't necessarily exist for others. For instance, you have to be a licensed attorney to be a county attorney, and we don't see that with other county offices like auditor, et cetera. The other thing is county attorney and county sheriffs both provide services to county boards that other county offices do not. So the county attorney provides a role for the public and for the voters, but it also is the attorney that provides advice and representation to the county board. So it's a different relationship. In addition, the sheriff, while providing services to the citizens of the county, also serves as a very unique role with county boards in that they provide security, for example, of our county offices where we're conducting business. So it's a little bit different relationship with regard to those two roles. And this particular bill, I think, it has been very thoughtfully crafted, and we really appreciate the input from the Office of the Secretary of State, the advice from Ms. Frazier, and our author to get this in what I think is really good shape to move it forward and make sure that we strike a really important balance between local control, which we all value as local elected officials, and ensuring that voters have the opportunity to weigh in on these vitally important elections. Most importantly, as crafted, we have the local governments could appoint if it was in the local government's best interest. We don't take that ability away, but it does also provide the option for county boards to call a special election in the case of these vacancies. And I guess at that, I am happy to answer any questions on.
Thank you so much. Senator Rest.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you.
I just want to understand, like, the timeline. Mm-hmm. So if a vacancy occurs, somebody resigns on February 1st in the year that they otherwise would be, there would be an election, that person is eligible to, okay, that person will serve until Election Day, and then whoever is elected on Election Day is sworn in immediately rather than waiting until the first Monday in January or something. Is that, am I reading that correctly, so that it is seamless? So the person who is appointed serves until someone else is elected, or the person who was appointed runs for the office and gets elected, and so they just continue to serve, but they're going to take the oath of office twice, once when they're appointed, and then once, and then again when they are, let's say people like them and they get elected. I'm just trying to understand the timeline, and I may indeed have it incorrect.
Mr. Mossman or Ms. Halverson?
Madam Chair and Senator Rest, the way it is constructed is that if there was a vacancy that arose on February 1st, the county board would have the option to either make an appointment or call a special election.
Yeah, I understand that point.
If the appointment was made, the appointment would go through the general election, and the individual elected at the general election would take office immediately after the general election.
And so you're Madam Chair, and
I'm confirming.
you're confirming my understanding.
Correct. If a special election was called and happened, they would serve until the end of the term.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much for clarification. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Coran.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And so, yeah, Senator, I had it's hard to believe that we didn't already have the cure in here for this. But on the just a couple questions. Senator Rest asked about or I guess I'll re-ask on 1.7, we changed from shall to must. It appeared, did we have a problem with counties not appointing temporary leadership in sheriff's or county attorney positions?
So, Senator Coran, I believe that we may have an answer from council on that.
Senator Coran, changing shall to must isn't a legal distinction. It's just a drafting convention to bring language into a more modern form.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Stengel. And then the other, what was the reason for the change? I think it was 120 days in the original version. We went to 84. And then educate us on what is the bond that they need to file? I was unaware of a bond for, because there's two references, give the bond and file the bond in two different portions here for the sheriff or county attorney. So that's all. I'm in favor of it. I think it's good policy, good procedure, and I don't want to jinx myself, but I like the bill. So thank you.
And I think there are 4 spots open for co-authors on this bill, Senator. Anyone want to field that particular question? Mr. Mossman?
Madam Chair and Senator Cran, the 84 days it's my understanding, working with council and the Secretary of State's office, links to the closing of the filing period for the general election in the year that the 4-year term would end. And so at that point, the general election process would just run. And then with regard to the bond, I actually don't have an answer to your question. That's the existing law, and maybe council or maybe the Secretary of State's office, who I think is here, could answer. Yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Freeman's over there saying
yeah,
nope.
It was just the curiosity more than anything. I haven't ever heard the term, and it's used differently in 2 locations. So I wasn't aware that they had to bond themselves for any elected office, and I don't want to see that trend move to others. So thank you.
And I believe this is going to State Gov next, so maybe they have an answer to that question. I don't.
Madam Chair, we're hoping State Gov meets. So
Oh, Miss Senator. Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the testifiers, can you give us examples of where this, or in the past, where we've had situations where a vacancy has occurred between a county attorney or a sheriff?
Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer that.
Go ahead, Ms. Alverson.
Madam Chair, Senator Anderson, I can share my own experience as a county commissioner. I can't remember the year because it was during COVID, but I was a fairly new county commissioner, and our county attorney resigned after a 30-year career. And we found out that we were required to appoint that person's successor. So we took that duty on as a board. We had a number of people who applied to be that person's successor, one person from inside the county, others from outside the county, and that field was interviewed by the entire county board. And we did also have input from the public, the way the public kind of weighed in. There was some nonprofit groups who ran a candidate forum so that people could hear from them. And basically the public was imploring us who they wanted appointed, as opposed to getting to weigh in on their own. And I found for myself that experience felt like this is really the public's role. The county attorney, you know, in that particular case is such a vitally important standalone elected office that me being in between the voter and the county attorney's office, it didn't feel good to me in that particular situation, because we did have candidates who came forward and essentially ran an election without an election resulting, if you will. And so that's why we started talking about support for action such as this. Because frankly, we were all a little surprised, as I think Senator Curran said, can't believe that this is what the law is. We all went, wow, okay. So I think that this particular bill gets us closer to the spirit of what we want with our relationship with our elected officials.
I guess, Madam Chair.
Senator Anderson.
I guess I don't see anything wrong with the language or the legislation. I just always assumed that when people resigned, that the county already had that wherewithal to appoint someone to step in and take over, and then when the general election came, that they would be then up for re-election or not up for re-election. Or if they basically said they were going to come and be temporary until the election, then somebody else would be out there running for that position until such time as the election occurred. So I didn't know that there was a problem, and I guess I hadn't heard that there was a crisis in the state about this situation, because I just assumed that, and I guess you should never assume, but anyway.
Go ahead, Senator Carlson.
Madam Chair, and I guess I want to say a few words about this. The situation that happened the way this is laid out, and it was very smooth. I think the people all felt that they were involved, and we had a smooth transition from the retirement of Jim Backstrom and into the new county attorney, and then the appointed county attorney was in the election. And there were other people that were also running, and we had a fair and open election, and the appointed person did prevail in the election. So it was good. But what this does is it allows the county board to choose which way they would like to go. So they're allowed to either make an appointment or call for a special election to fill the vacancy. So that's if there's time before the end of the term. So, and you know, like we said, there was a lot of decisions to be made on this amendment that is a delete all, and as Senator Curran would put it, it's still warm. because it was just printed when we got here. So there's a lot of decisions that had to be made, and I think that now we have something that gives the county boards the power to follow, local control.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Barr? No, I'm good. You're good. Okay. Any other comments or Senator Anderson, did you have anything to add? Did you have anything? Any further comment? All right. I think we're looking for someone to make a motion. Senator Boldon.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion that Senate File 3555 be, as amended, be recommended to pass and be referred to State and Local Gov and Veterans Committee.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes, and it shall be re-referred to the State and Local Government and Veterans Committee. And I will just note that I have every expectation that the State and Local Government Committee will be convening as usual, in spite of the fact that our former leader is having health issues at this time. I know. All right. And with that, I believe we have completed the day's work. Thank you, everyone. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.